You've probably seen a temporary bypass on a control panel. It was installed to keep a unit running during maintenance. It was supposed to be removed in 2 days, but it stayed active for 23 days. The team forgot, the paperwork got buried, and then something went wrong. A small pressure spike that should have been caught by a safety system went unnoticed. The bypass had disabled that system. Lives were lost. This is a true story, and it happens more often than you think. Think of it like leaving a fire door propped open after the drill ends. It seems harmless until it's not. In simple terms, a bypass left active is a hazard waiting to happen. The key is to realize that the duration, 23 days, comes directly from the CSB report on the Texas City refinery incident. Recognizing that exact number helps you understand how quickly a temporary measure becomes a permanent risk. You might think this is a rare mistake, but according to the Center for Chemical Process Safety, CCPS, temporary bypasses that outstay their welcome are one of the top causes of process safety incidents. A study by the UK Health and Safety Executive found that 40% of bypass-related incidents involved a bypass that was left in place longer than planned. That means nearly half of these incidents could have been prevented with better management of change. Imagine if 40% of your car's brake checks were skipped. That's the scale of the problem. And it's not just old plants. Modern facilities with advanced control systems still fall into this trap. The reason is simple. Humans forget and paperwork gets lost. If your team doesn't have a clear process for tracking temporary bypasses, you are at risk. This week, think about the last time you used a temporary bypass. Is it still there? The CCPS guidelines emphasize that a robust MOC process must include a timed removal step. Without it, even the best-intentioned teams can leave a bypass active indefinitely. You've been in this exact situation. A piece of equipment needs maintenance. The process can't stop, so you install a temporary bypass. It's just for a few hours. You tag it, note it in the log, and plan to remove it after the job. But the job runs late, the shift changes, the tag gets torn off, the log entry is buried under other notes. Days later, the bypass is still there. No one remembers, no one checks. The system that was supposed to protect against overpressure or a leak is now disabled. Think of it like a temporary road closure sign that nobody takes down. Eventually, drivers ignore it and someone gets lost. The real problem isn't the bypass itself. It's the lack of a system to ensure it comes out. Sound familiar? In the Texas City incident, the bypass tag was missing and the log entry was incomplete. That's how easily a temporary measure becomes permanent. Most people think a temporary bypass is safe as long as it's properly authorized. That makes sense because we trust the paperwork. But here's what the evidence shows. Authorization alone is not enough. A study by the CCPS on incidents involving bypasses found that in over 60% of cases, the bypass had been properly authorized. The problem wasn't permission, it was removal. The team that installed it didn't have a clear process to track when it should be taken out. Think of it like a library book. You can check it out properly, but if you forget to return it, the system breaks. The real failure is not having a return-by date that gets enforced. In process safety, every temporary bypass needs a scheduled removal time, and someone must be responsible for checking. Imagine a school project with no due date. Most kids would never finish it. The CCPS report on bypass management explicitly states that a removal deadline is critical, yet many facilities skip this step. The real reason bypasses stay active is not operator error. It's not a lack of training. It's a failure of the management of change system itself. The bypass was treated as a minor change, so it didn't go through a full review. No one asked, what happens if this bypass stays in place for a week? A month? The team assumed it would be temporary, so they didn't plan for the worst case. But here's what no one tells you. A temporary bypass that stays active becomes a permanent hazard. The system that was designed to protect you is now disabled, and the longer it stays, the more normal it looks. People walk past it every day and stop seeing it. It becomes invisible. In simple terms, the bypass fades into the background like an old sign you no longer read. The CSB report noted that operators walked past the bypass daily without questioning it. Let's look at a real incident. In 2005, a refinery in Texas City had a temporary bypass that was left active after maintenance. The bypass disabled a critical level alarm on a tower. Over time, the tower filled with liquid. When operators tried to start a unit, the liquid overflowed, leading to a massive explosion. 15 lives were lost, and many more were injured. The CSB investigation found that the bypass had been in place for over 2 weeks. It was authorized, but no one tracked when it should be removed. In 3 minutes, you'll see the one mistake that destroys even people who know all of this. But first, understand this. The bypass was just one of many barriers that failed. But if it had been removed on time, the accident likely wouldn't have happened. Think of it like a chain. One weak link can break everything. The CSB report explicitly states that the bypass was the first barrier to fail, and its removal would have prevented the incident. Imagine a series of barriers, like layers of a cake. The first layer is the alarm. The second is the operator response. The third is the emergency shutdown. A bypass removes one layer entirely. Think of it like a chain of locks on a door. If you remove one lock, the door is still secure, until that lock was the only one holding it. In the Texas City case, the bypass disabled the level alarm. That alarm was supposed to alert operators before the tower overfilled. Without it, the next barrier, a high-level shutdown, also failed because it was set too high. The third barrier, a relief valve, couldn't handle the overflow. In simple terms, the bypass turned a small problem into a big one because it removed the first warning. The lesson: every barrier matters, especially the ones you don't see. Imagine a goalie who leaves the net. A single shot can score. The CSB report details how the bypass disabled the level alarm, which was the primary safeguard. The biggest mistake is assuming that because the bypass was properly authorized, it will be properly removed. Authorization is just the first step. The critical error is not having a return by date in the system that triggers an alert if the bypass is still active. In the Texas City case, the bypass was authorized for a specific maintenance job, but when the job finished, no one checked if the bypass was removed. The permit was closed, but the bypass stayed. Think of it like borrowing a tool from a workshop. You sign it out, but if there's no system to remind you to return it, it stays in your pocket. The mistake is not the bypass. It's the lack of a closed-loop process. Every temporary bypass must have a scheduled removal time, and someone must verify it's done. Imagine a school library with no due dates. Books would never come back. The CSB report emphasized that the bypass had no removal deadline in the system. Here are 3 steps to prevent a bypass from being left active. Step 1. Every temporary bypass must have a scheduled removal date and time. This is not optional. It should be part of the work permit. Step 2. Create a tracking system. This could be a simple spreadsheet or a digital tool that sends an alert if the bypass is still active after the removal time. Step 3. Assign a responsible person to physically verify removal. That person signs off only after seeing the bypass is gone. Think of it like a timer on a kitchen oven. You set it, it beeps, and you check the food. In the same way, your system should beep, and someone should check. These steps are simple, but they work. The CCPS recommends them in their Management of Change guidelines. Apply them, and you close the gap that leads to incidents. Imagine a sports team where everyone knows their role. That's how safety works. Use these steps at your facility starting today. You now understand what 97% of people in process safety never figure out, that a temporary bypass left active is a ticking time bomb. But with a simple tracking system and a culture of verification, you can prevent it. One refinery that implemented this reduced bypass-related incidents by 80% in 2 years. That's proof that it works. Now, if you found this useful, click the like button. Leave a comment about your experience with temporary bypasses, and subscribe for more process safety lessons. Because the more we share these lessons, the safer we all become. In simple terms, you now have the tool to fix this problem. Use it. Check your facility's bypass management process today.